G'day and welcome to another Rugged Life video. Today is an exciting day for me because we are replacing my leaking radiator. I got this replaced by some dodgy guys before I purchased the X-trail, and not only did they put a really cheap radiator, but they've put the wrong coolant as well. As you can see, it should be the green one. So I am replacing it with this one that I purchased from sparebox.com.au, which I highly recommend buying parts from because they are quite reasonable. Actually, they're cheaper compared to other retail shops. So what we need is, I just purchased a pre-mixed coolant because I'm lazy. I don't want to buy the concentrate and mix it. So I'm just going to do that. I bought myself a radiator flush and couple of 5-litre bottles of distilled water. So for this one, my X-trail only clocked up 150,000 Ks at the moment. So I don't know the history of it if someone's done it, so I'm just going to do it anyway and do one of these guys. So we're going to do it simple today. Just going to follow the instructions at the back, which is to drain the existing coolant, put the bottle in, fill the whole system with distilled water, and then let it run to operating temperature, turn on the heater, let it run for another 10 minutes, and then drain everything, and then see how we go. If it's still dirty, then I'm going to flush it again until it's clear, and then do my radiator and my coolant. First things first, for the people who've seen my other videos, you will know that my X-trail's got a bash plate. So I will have to remove that today to change the radiator to gain access to the bottom of it. And the other thing I want to point out is I've got an automatic transmission in my X-trail. So the automatic transmission will have two of these, an inlet outlet for the transmission coolant, because it goes through here and cools itself as well. So the manual ones don't have these, and this is way over here, somewhere close to the middle. Alright, so bash plate's out. It's always a good idea to have a look around underneath your car every time you get a chance. So I have started draining it now. So undo the cap for faster drain. Let some air in, and I've slowly undone the drain plug into my bin. Don't forget to dispose of your coolant properly, wear gloves, have some towels around, some plastic bags. So while we're waiting for the coolant to drain, I'll show you my bash plate. That's what it is. 6mm thick. I've got a video of it in my channel if you want to check it out. It's around 12 kgs in weight, aluminium bash plate, made by Asphere. It's a South African company. Very good. And if you want to get it, unfortunately there's none in Australia, and as a matter of fact, it's quite impossible to get a bash plate for a Nissan X-trail T30 in Australia, unfortunately. My understanding from Pedder Suspension is that this is the last one in the country, and I got it. And while we're still waiting for more coolant to drain, we are going to get a 10mm socket and undo the 10mm bolt underneath there to be able to lift the coolant reservoir tank. So we can lift it up and get the contents of it to drain through this hose back into the tank, and then down the bottom to drain. And while I'm waiting, I've taken the opportunity to blast the inside of my reservoir tank for my coolant right there. So I'm just drying it. Might as well clean the inside while I've got it out. So it looks like we've done the draining. Right, so when you remove the top and the bottom hoses, sometimes it's quite hard to get, so it will help if you've got a big flathead screwdriver and you can just slip it in between the hose and the plastic stopper here, and just pry it a little bit on each, all around to loosen it up, and then you can shake it. So I've got my hose over there. Okay, so I've got the old radiator out over there. I've got the fan out. You can see the bad leak there. So basically what you need to do is, I've undone the plastic clips that secure the wiring for the fans all the way up to, if you look at your battery where it is just in front of it, just behind the headlight, there's going to be one there that you need to undo to give you enough slack to be able to put your fan aside like that. Then there's a couple of bolts, that one and that one, that you need to remove. It attaches to the top of the radiator. You won't miss it when you see it. And then you remove the two brackets that hold the radiator in place, these two there, and you basically carefully pull the stuff out. The radiator sits on these two bushings, those circle bits, just sits on those ones. So you just lift it up. The fan sits on the radiator, secured by just a slot. These two slot into at the bottom of the radiator. So remove those, lift it up, hang it there, and while you're in here, it's always a good idea to check your mounts, whatever else you can see, rust, anything wrong, loose, hoses. Check it out while you're here. Alright, so I've put the fan and the radiator in. So the technique is to put the radiator in first, let it seat properly on the mounts, and then you got to slowly feed the fan through this side first where the battery is, and you got to make sure that this plastic, one of these down here, is going to go through your relay box first, diagonal that way, and then slip it on, and then push this side down, and then you got to properly align. Be very careful when you put this on, because it might rub into the fins of your radiator and bend it, so you don't want to do that. So I've come across a little bit of an issue here, because the new radiator comes with that nut and it doesn't come with a bolt, whereas the original radiator has got a screw that screws into the plastic. It doesn't have that. So luckily I always keep a set of nuts and bolts and that sort of thing. So washers, I've just managed to grab the right size, rigged it up like that, straight into like that. So this is quite important to keep, some spare nuts and bolts, whether new or used. It's always handy to have different size, the most common size lying around in your house, so that if you come across issues like that, which you tend to often come across if you're doing quite a bit of DIY jobs, they do come in handy and they save the day. And also make sure to replace broken clips like these ones, because there's obviously no point of them being there. Got some broken clips there and there as well that I had to remove. That one. A bag of zip ties saved the day. So I've secured it with new zip ties there, and the wiring down there that I removed as well. Alright, so we've secured all the hoses, top and bottom. All my transmission hoses back in the same place, obviously. Bottom hose in, new radiator, plugs double checked and secured. Top hose done, all mounting points done. The reservoir for the coolant's done. A little bit of advice: before you put it in, I just removed the actual hose and flushed it with water and let it dry. But I recommend that if you do remove the hose from the tank, that you attach the hose to the tank before you secure the tank to the car, because it's easier that way. So we're now ready to fill it up with new coolant. So we've now rolled into the next day. I had to do some errands yesterday, and so we've filled up the radiator with new coolant, and we've put coolant coolant into our reservoir, and leave the cap off. Start the engine, wait for it to warm up, and then the thermostat's gonna open, coolant will go through the system, and you'll see the level go down. Top it up with more coolant, and then you could also squeeze the top hose, several times to help purge the air out of the system. Open up your heater, and your blower, so the coolant goes through your heater core, and then keep an eye on it. Top it up as needed, and then put the cap back on. Let the engine run for 15, 20, sometimes up to 30 minutes to allow enough time for the air to purge, and shut it off. Let it cool down, however long it takes. Open it up, check the coolant level, top it up with more coolant if needed, check your reservoir and see what the level is, top it up if needed, and then close the cap again, and you can go for another 20-30 minutes, or go for a drive or whatever, and then or just use it as per normal, and then keep checking it a couple more times after the engine's cooled down. Top it up as needed, and then once the level stays the same, then that's it. You're pretty much done with the job, and all systems are good to go. Now, the other thing you need to be careful of is if you're like me, we've got a automatic transmission. You got to remember that you may have lost a little bit of transmission fluid when you remove the bottom hoses. So depending on how much you lose, you may need to top it up. So before you start driving, make sure you check your transmission oil level. Just quickly, how to do that is you start the engine, press on the brakes, put the transmission into each gear, so reverse, neutral, drive, 2, 1, and leave it in gear for a good 10 seconds on each gear. So you go from park, you go reverse, leave it for 10 seconds, and then next one down, 10 seconds, next one down, and so on. Put it back into park, pull up your dipstick, wipe it off, dip it again, check your level, and then top it up as needed. Check for any leaks after you've run the engine for quite a while. Any leaks on especially your hoses, your hose fittings. Put your finger in, feel for any moisture or anything from top to bottom. So the last thing I need to do now is, after I've given my engine a bit of a wash there for some spilt coolant when I was topping it up, and also down the bottom here some spillage, is to put my bash plate back on. And that's about it. Job done. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.